Welcome everyone to another episode of the Pierce Brothers. I'm Joe and I'm here with Jake, and today we're going to be talking about some pre-war Smith & Wesson N-frames. There's a lot of history to cover with Smith & Wesson, so...
Yeah, so we're going to cover mostly the 44 special caliber guns and the 45 ACP caliber guns. So we won't talk too much about these registered magnums. That's a 5-inch registered magnum there in 357.
Very cool guns.
And this is a 4-inch registered magnum here. This one was shipped to the Kansas City Police Department.
They're pretty average, we'll say that.
Yeah, pretty average.
Pretty average as far as revolvers go.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll leave that video for a different day. We'll also talk about the 3844 heavy duties and outdoorsmen's a different day as well. We're going to kind of focus on the 44 special guns. So on the first model, second, and third model hand ejectors, and the 1917s. So,
yeah, like we said, there's just way too much to cover for one video.
Yeah.
And Jake is the expert, so he'll be doing most of the talking, and I'll ask questions like an idiot. So,
sounds good.
All right.
So, the N-frame started in 1907 with the invention or the introduction of the Smith & Wesson triple lock, also known as the first model hand ejector, the new Century model, whatever you want to call it. It gets its name triple lock from because it has 3 locking mechanisms. It locks in the back of the cylinder here, in the front, and then right up here in the cylinder crane it has a third lock there. So
yeah, this little knob that sticks up locks right up into there.
Yeah. Pretty cool guns. They did not have heat-treated cylinders, interestingly enough. So these were made from 1907 until 1915. They did keep them in the catalog until 1917 to sell out old stock. This 4-inch here shipped in 1917 to El Paso, Texas, along with this one here. This one was also shipped in 1917 to Texas. This one's was a factory nickel gun. It has been nickel plated at some time in the past. Grips are carved pearls. Still a very cool gun. Standard barrel lengths was 6.5 inch, but they did make them in 4-inch, 5, and 7.5. Those other barrel lengths are pretty rare. 4-inch is probably the most desirable. This is a 5-inch model here with factory ivory grips,
which is special.
Yeah, very special.
Not many of those did. So
no, most of them had fixed sights as well.
We got some target models.
Yeah, they do have a target model as well.
Yeah.
So there's this one here. This one's in pretty good shape for its age, considering.
Yeah, and then there's this piece of garbage.
Yeah,
this one's a little more beat up. It's still a nice gun, obviously, but I joke about that. But
a little salty
for how old it is. Still in great shape. Just a little less finished than this one. So.
Yeah. Standard caliber was 44 special. They did make them in other calibers. This one here was made in 455 Webley. This is not a military gun. This was one of the rare commercial models. Also, this one very well may have been converted to 45 Colt before it left the factory. We need to get a factory letter to confirm. Interesting note, Smith & Wesson got it pretty much right from the beginning with their cylinder dimensions. These were not heat-treated cylinders, but they're still very strong and robust. If you take a modern Smith & Wesson cylinder and do measurements on it, cylinders have remained virtually identical, the same design for the past 100 years, 100 plus years. They did lengthen it when they introduced the 44 Magnum, so just to accommodate the longer cartridge and stuff, but overall it's pretty much the same cylinder design they introduced in 1907, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, which is really cool that Smith & Wesson, 100 years didn't make a change on the cylinder size, so they got it pretty much right from the beginning.
Yeah, and even being not heat-treated cylinders, they're very robust, durable guns. They didn't have problems blowing up like Colt single-action armies did.
Yeah.
because of the metallurgy and whatnot. But yeah, very cool guns. Also the rifling. If you look at any Smith & Wesson made from the 1870s until 1979, the rifling is all virtually the same, because they got the rifling machines from the Sharps Rifle Company and used those machines all the way up until 1979. So rifling remained virtually the same throughout production. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, very cool.
Speaking about powerful loads, the original factory load was a 246 grain lead round nose bullet loaded with black powder, 26 grains, traveling 780 feet a second. Elmer Keith famously came up with his famous load. It was a 250 grain bullet, just like this one here. It's got a good flat point bullet there with a full caliber driving band here. Very good, accurate bullet, good for killing game, gets good penetration and shock with that. His loads were
much faster than the factory loads.
Yeah. 17 and a half grains at 2400, pushing 1200 feet a second with that 250 grain bullet. If you're using old balloon head cases, you'd have to use 18 and a half grains to get the same velocities, just because the way the case design, you need that extra grain to get the same velocity. So
that's right.
So yeah, Elmer Keith was a famous user of the triple lock. Frank Hamer, the famous Texas Ranger, used one, at least in one shootout. And then Bill Jordan reportedly used one, a 4-inch nickel model, when he was a Border Patrol agent. So I need to do more research on that. But yeah, reportedly that he used one of those. So.
And the triple lock was also known as the first model hand ejector.
Yes, first model hand ejector, New Century model, the military model. So had quite a few different names.
Yeah. So what was the second model hand ejector? What replaced the triple lock?
So the second model, this was made from 1915 until 1940. It did away with that ejector shroud and the third lock. So there's no lock in the crane area here anymore, just in the front and back of the cylinder. This is the target model. They also made them with fixed sights. I only have the one to show you. Sorry about that. This one is also 44 special. They did make them in other calibers, 3840, 4440. Those are kind of rare. 4, 5, and 6.5 inch barrel lengths. 6.5 being standard. 4 and 5 are pretty rare. It's in an old SD Myers holster there. Makes a pretty cool rig. But yeah, those were very popular guns. They sold 17,500 or so of the second model series. Yeah. There was demand, though, for that ejector rod shroud. And so there was a company called Wolf Klar in 1926 that convinced Smith & Wesson to bring it back on a special order basis. And that became known as the third model hand ejector.
So why was that ejector shroud taken off in the first place for the second model?
Some say it was due to cost, but also the British didn't want it because in World War I they ended up with some triple locks and got dirt and mud and stuff in there, and they caused some issues. So it's taken off. There was a lot of guys like lawmen and stuff that wanted it returned for durability's sake, and so that came back in 1926. This is a 4-inch third model hand ejector. These were only chambered in 44 special. 5-inch barrel lengths were standard, just like this one. It's a 5-inch model there for you. 5-inch models were standard. The 4-inch I showed you is a pretty rare gun. And they did make them with the 6.5-inch, which were also pretty rare. But yeah, those were popular with lawmen throughout the pre-war years. Yeah, they made, got written down, 4,976 were made. They did become a standard catalog item in the later 30s and were made until 1941, at the start of World War II. So yeah, that's the third model. One other
One other model of interest is the model 1917, which is this beauty right here.
Which is this one here. This is a commercial model. This one was shipped in the 1930s. The 1917 is interesting because it was the first Smith & Wesson to have a heat-treated cylinder, and that was done at the request of the U.S. government in 1917. Smith & Wesson didn't introduce heat treatment to all their cylinders until 1920. That's when all their models were had heat-treated cylinders. Some came a little before that in 1919, but by 1920, all their guns had heat-treated cylinders by that point. These were cool because they're chambered in 45 ACP, and of course the 45 does not have a rim like most revolver cartridges. So in order to work in these guns and use the ejector properly, they developed this little half moon clip system. So you drop them in, and the extractor actually engages on that, and ejects the cartridges. So,
and this is original ammo, right, from 1940,
1941.
So as you can see, it's a little beat up, corrosion on there.
Yeah, yeah.
Jake and his old crappy ammo.
Yeah. Yeah, these were cool guns. Used by the U.S. in World War I. Some saw some used in World War II as well. They were made from 1917 till 1946. 2,000 were made for the commercial market. 160,000 or so were made for the U.S. military. And then 25,000 were made for Brazil starting in 1937.
So there are a lot of military models out there. The commercial model that Jake has is quite rare.
Yeah.
2,000.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Much harder to come by the commercial version.
Yeah. And this one here, unfortunately, when I got it,
some guy.
super nice shape, except on this side of the cylinder, you can see where kind of all that discoloration is, because some guy scratched his name and social security number in the side plate there, and to get it off, I kind of polished the frame a little bit, or that side plate. I will have it re-blued here at some point, just the side plate. But his name was Dick, and yeah, he kind of ruined that gun. So,
still a nice looking gun considering the rest of the finish is in great shape in that. So,
nowadays we have these full moon clips that hold all 6 cartridges. More convenient.
Way more convenient. So,
and they did develop 45 auto rims, so they basically took the 45 case and put a rim on it, so you could use it like a standard revolver cartridge. So,
yeah. And you can find that ammo still even today. There's some here and there on shelves. It's a lot rarer to find because most people just use moon clips. Faster reloads, faster unloading, all that with moon clips, which are awesome. So
yeah, for sure.
Yep.
So yeah, that's kind of just a very condensed history of the N-frame in the bigger calibers.
Yeah.
I bought my first Smith & Wesson when I was 13. It was a pre-war 38 Special military and police model made in the 20s, and that kind of spoiled me on the old pre-war long-action guns. They, in my opinion, I don't think Smith & Wesson's ever made finer guns. From World War II on, it's just been kind of a steady decline in workmanship. They have made improvements in design and stuff. Yeah, they've improved the design, strengthened them. They've been using better steels and better in recent years. And from a durability standpoint, they're probably more durable guns, but nothing beats the old fine craftsmanship of the pre-war stuff.
Yeah, you take that hands-off machining and that, like modern-day machining, it just takes so much of the human aspect out of things that you just don't get those fine touches on revolvers like we did back in the day. So.
Yeah, for sure.
These are all very unique and special handguns for that reason. So you look at modern day guns and they're just, You
Cookie
can buy
cutter
them
now.
everywhere. Yeah, they're all cookie cutters. So
Yeah.
nothing special about them, but
Uh-huh.
man, these things are like pretty cool. If you like revolvers and that, I mean, you can't go wrong with a pre-war Smith & Wesson handgun. So
Yeah.
we hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Like Jake said, this was a very condensed version of Smith & Wesson history there. So consider this part one of many parts of Smith & Wesson revolver history and that, because there's a lot you can go over, and like you can talk for hours about Smith & Wesson revolvers. So
Yeah, you could. They've been making stuff for a long time.
very long time. So we tried to condense this and just do some cool hand ejector models and go through some of that history, and keep watching. We'll have part 2, part 3, part 5. I don't know how many we'll do, but
Yeah.
lots of parts.
Yeah,
So,
lots of parts.
but yeah, thank you for watching. We hope you've enjoyed this episode.
Yeah, be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe. Anything you can do to help grow the channel. Let us know in the comments what you want to see in the future. We'll be sure to do it if possible. So
That's right. So yeah, we appreciate the support, and we'll see you next time on the Pierce Brothers.